So a key piece of my kit is my travelling watercolour set. When I do my daily drawing habit in sketchbooks like this, I carry that with me. It's I think this might be a student set. It's not about the quality of the paint, but it's just about the fact that I can pop it in my bag and pull it out whenever I need to capture what I see really quickly and effectively. So as a designer, it's really important for me to be always looking for interesting colour combinations. It's just as important as the original sketching component of my design process. The reason being that I've got a colour palette, that's roughly like, it changes from season to season a little bit sometimes, but there's core elements in it that will always run through, and they're kind of earthy colours that feel like they've been dug up out of the ground, or they're faded brights. They feel like they've been in the Australian sunshine for a long time, and lots of neutrals, because that to me represents the earth. So this is my colour palette that I've worked at developing for quite a few years, and that comes from my observation of nature, rather than using colour forecasting, which the idea of, you know, Pantone putting out a new colour every year, and it's a nice colour quite often. There's nothing wrong with the colour itself, but the idea of forecasting a colour to me suggests it's on trend. People are going to be buying it that year, and then the next year it'll be off trend. So what happens with the things that people have bought the year before? They suddenly find them less valuable. So for me, colour forecasting is kind of adding to the throwaway culture, which is exactly what I'm not interested in. I'm interested in designing for a long time, for longevity. So somebody will buy a design of mine with this colour palette, knowing that this is grounded in the Australian landscape and that it will last the test of time. And so at this point in the design process, I may choose the colours that I've already worked with, and I've brought some with me to do that. But I thought it was a good opportunity just to show you how I would, perhaps if I wanted a new colour palette, honing in to the original source material that I worked with and looking at the colours that are in there, because they are absolutely sensational. There's some lovely rusts and olives, and this brown going to a sort of a metallic grey. Easy for me to just get a clean piece of paper, for starters, and just jotting them down like little notes, and seeing if I can capture a combination of 3 or 4 colours that say this in their essence. Which, luckily enough, these student watercolours are not as grunty as like a professional watercolour, so they're all nice and watered back already. So it's not like I've got to work very hard to get that colour, the orange and the green. I'm not quite sure what this colour is. Let's have a look. Oh, that's black, isn't it? Don't want black. I often, if I want to sort of dirty a colour down, say that orange was too bright orange, I would be putting a little bit of violet in there, just to tone it down, because it will give you, it's hard to show in watercolours, I'll be doing it later on, it gives you a slightly dirtied rust without killing the essence of the colour. It's a bit weak, but rather than putting black in, most people think you want to go darker in that colour, you put black in it, but it kills the vibrancy of the colour. So the idea is to put the opposite colour, which is a violet, with the orange, just to knock it back. That's very weak. Anyway, so these are colour trials. Once they dry, I'll try and perhaps match those colours if I've got the time to do that. And there's a beautiful red in there as well, sitting in amongst that chocolate brown. And so what I would do with these colours, once they're dry, identify a key area, like when that dries, that's going to get darker than that bit. So I'll be thinking, is that the colour I want? Manipulate them a little bit. They don't have to be exactly the same colours as these, but the interpretation that they need to come from something, and it might as well be nature, quite frankly. Now that's a sort of a sepia black-brown. So if I mix it here with a bit, not ochre, it's a bluish colour, so I'm going to put some blue down there, see what happens. It's got silvery, and it's got a bit of red in it. It's quite a difficult one, as the shadows are different to the highlights. So it's almost like it changes as the form moves around. Not black. Whoops. It's like a pinky rust, I guess, in there. Something like that. So I'm really exaggerating the tones that I see in there. Otherwise, if I don't, it's going to be too literal, and that's just a little boring. So I'm just pushing the boundaries, giving it a bit of creative license. And generally, as a good tip for when you're designing something, 3 colours is going to always work. 2 of them from a similar background, and then a twist, like 2 different yellows and a grey, or orange and pink and a really dull green. Or 2 greys and 1 bright pink. So it's like 2 and 1. So there's always the asymmetry, again in colour, asymmetry in colour, using 3s and 5s and 7s. But if you start going for 7 colours, I think that's too much for me. You don't need 7 colours, I think. The fewer things the fewer elements that you've got to play with, it's quite hard to resolve, but it becomes a stronger design at the end of it, I think. Which is why I like screen printing as opposed to digital, because digital printing is endless. It makes me a bit nervous. It's like, when do you stop? Whereas screen printing and cut paper stencils, it's very limited. The technical breadth is limited, so you have to be really creative within what you can do, and I think that makes for a stronger designer. Anyway, I will leave those colours. They're a bit bright, but if I chose that blue-grey and that green with a little bit of that sandy colour, that might be quite a nice combination. Or this grey and blue there. Actually those 3 colours are really nice. So anyway, I'll let them dry and we'll move on to actually mixing the print paste.